figurative language. Okay. So figurative language, a lot of people would ask, why should I learn this? Because this is also a part of your fluency proficiency aspect. Just knowing how to speak directly is not how you achieve fluency in language. And you definitely are going to require it, whether it's your personal or professional space, right, for communication. So it has its own space. So it hasn't been included without any thoughts put into it. But the examples that the slides mention or talk about, these things you need to, just reading it once or twice may not actually help you with understanding the concept behind it, right? You also need to look for more examples on your own so that, you also get your conceptual clarity properly. But going back to what I was talking about, most of the lectures that are delivered to you, they're mostly descriptive in nature. And that's how these kind of lectures that are done on, video interface mode are like, right? Unless it has some practical component. What you can do is you can look at this content and do your own synthesis, right? You can break it down, like take a lecture. That's how usually we do. In any traditional lecture, that's what happens. Once the teacher is done with it, you will have to take down your notes and then make break it down, make a synthesis of, and convert it into a way that you understand it, right? The same you will have to do with figures of speech. If you haven't done it now, until now, you will have to make that effort so that you can approach those questions in the exams more easily. If your way is to by heart things, it's not going to help, at least with the learning part. Grammar, maybe bits of it here and there you can do with this kind of style of learning. But the rest of the part, mostly for English too, it won't help you much, neither for learning nor for your exams, right? So now you tell me about this. How good are you with this figures of speech? Let me see how you're approaching it. Even if it is to take it up, I'll do it in detail for the next class, but I just need to get an understanding from you on how you are, approaching this particular lecture to figure out what your problems are. Someone for the last session was saying there's about 16 or 17 of them. So which ones are more important? These are the questions that we cannot answer, right? How do I say that? Like, for example, you should know metaphor more than simile, or you should know juxtaposition more than paradox. All of it are different kinds of ways in which we use figurative language. You need to understand how they are used. Okay. So just to give you, you read the first slide of the lecture about what, it talks a little bit about what these figures of speech are and what they are meant for. So for any of these things, you first need to understand why are they used in first place in language. Okay. So then rest of the things follow. Right? What are figures of speech used for? Like, when do you use figurative language in general? Can you give a few purposes for using figurative language? No? Try saying things. See, one could be when you don't want to be direct, right? So we were discussing professional writing a while ago, where you do not use figures of speech. Why? Or maybe not as much as you see in the other forms of writing. We don't use it so regularly in your professional writing. Why do you think that is? We discussed this, no?
They are informal.
They're informal, and more than that, it's not accessible to everyone. There can be confusions. Okay, so which is why we decide that, okay, in professional, we'll not do that. But other forms of writing, your informal speech or conversation with someone, all of those places, these things would figure in, right? So these are all elements that help you draw attention to a point that you want to make, to emphasize better on the points that you want to make, okay? Or talk about things that you are reluctant to talk about in direct language, right? Help you do comparison with things. So the major thing that linguistically that figures of speech would do are comparisons. Some of the comparisons that you see are direct, some of them are indirect, right? Like this is the basic difference between a simile and a metaphor. Simile would do it directly or indirectly. How does a simile do this? Is the comparison in simile, is it direct comparison or indirect comparison?
Ma'am, indirect.
Is it? Your example, okay, let's take an example. So for example, I said, okay, he's as cold as ice. So as cold as ice is a direct comparison or an indirect comparison?
Direct.
As cold as ice? Was both the question answered by Tanishka? Or did someone
Yes,
else? I
ma'am.
did not check. You only answered. But you said it was indirect, no? First time?
Yes, ma'am. I thought. I'm confused in simile and
You are,
metaphor.
I can see that you're confused. Simile is an indirect form of comparison. For direct form, I have to say something like he was the lion in the battle, right? This is direct, right? He was the lion in the battle. I did not say he fought like a lion in the battle. So when you say like a lion, this is indirect comparison. When you say he was the lion in the battle, this is direct comparison. You were right in the first go. So don't get confused. Similes would be more indirect. Whenever you say like something, this is not direct comparison. This is indirect only, right? As opposed to saying something like was the lion in the battle. This is direct. You're directly comparing the lion and the person themselves in the battle, right? So similarly, you have other forms of figures of speech for comparison. Some of them direct, sometimes some others indirect, right? Most of them do indirect comparisons for that matter. Only I think is similes, sorry, metaphor is the one which will do direct comparison, right? Sometimes you also see substitution, right? Sometimes you see repetition. Sometimes you see unrealistic or exaggerated comparisons. Unrealistic and exaggerated comparisons would be what? Can you give me examples from what you have learned? So something like a hyperbole, right? By the name itself suggests that it is an exaggeration. So
Yes,
in
ma'am.
order to, so in order to talk about something, you use an exaggerated form of it, right? So let's take a few examples. Let's see what comes. Just give me a moment. I'm just trying to go back to that slide where we have it. What other figures of speech would be used for exaggeration? Or say
Irony.
to present something that is unrealistic or oh, okay, it was not in this.
It's
Tell me.
personification, ma'am. We can say that.
Personification doesn't have exaggeration, but yes, it can have elements of unreal things,
Yeah,
right?
something which is
Unrealistic.
not unrealistic.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct, correct. Anything more? Hyperbole, then there is paradox. How about that?
It is a situation, ma'am, which
It is a
is true
situation.
but sounds impossible.
Hmm. Trying to put this up, but I am unable to. Just give me a moment so that I don't have to speak like this in air. Maybe we'll need the use the PPT as well.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Hmm. Okay, here it is. Tell me once you can see the screen properly, okay?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Okay, right.
Yes,
So what
ma'am.
is paradox here? Look at this one. Situation or statement that is true but sounds impossible or conflicting, right? Examples, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. Now, what is here? There is some element of truth associated with it, but then it cannot be entirely possible as well, right? So in that term, it is a little unrealistic. Sounds so, yet you see that there is some elements of truth involved in it, right? For other sentences as well. Men work together, whether they work together or apart. I
Ma'am,
must be
can you
cruel to be
explain
kind.
this? I really don't understand. Means how are they men work together, whether they work together or apart?
Men work together. See, there is some necessity to that part. You have to work together, whether you actually work together or apart, right? So a part of it is definitely true, which is what men work together, right? Do we have any different space to work, or do we have any different scenarios to work? No. We end up working together, whether we work together physically with each other or whether we are apart from each other, right?
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
So a part of it sound, you know, that in overall it looks like you can't be true. Both of this can't be true. Like for example, men work
Yeah.
together, whether they work together or apart. In the first go you look at it, it looks like impossible for both of this to be true. But yet the overall meaning of it is intact. Right? That is what paradox means. Same here, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. Right? So if all are equal, then how can some be more equal than others? Right? So it's basically defying the aspect of quality. This is this, right? We know we can assess these from our surroundings and our own society or anything, that this is true, right? Same, I must be cruel to be kind. Certain actions sometimes looks like, this is very cruel to do. Like, for example, they're denying freedom. But some kind of reasonable restrictions needs to be placed on freedom so as to make sure that people do not misuse it. So these kind of situations
Yes,
or statements which have got an overall truth value to it, although they look like two contradicting or opposing or conflicting parts. This is paradox, right? So roughly, if you talk about figures of speech, they may be divided into, or the main purposes that they are used to would be either to, all of them are used to provide emphasis to what you are saying, to highlight an aspect of what you are saying. But for that, you could either use repetition, and repetition is a process that you see mostly in alliteration, anaphora, right? Assonance, consonance, sibilance. So out of this alliteration, and yeah, here, alliteration, assonance, consonance, and sibilance, these are repetition of sounds, right? Look at this one,
Yes, ma'am.
TikTok, Coca-Cola, PayPal, Peppa Pig, Kit Kat, right? What are we doing here? We are just repeating the first sound of two adjacent words. This is alliteration. So this is about the repetition of, so you're drawing attention or emphasis to what you're saying by repetition of sounds in adjacent words. Similar is the case for the next one, assonance, consonance, and sibilance, right? Assonance, the difference between all of them is on what sounds are being repeated. In assonance, what are they? What is the thing that is
Vowels.
repeated? Right? In consonants and sibilants,
In
consonant sound,
consonants is
right?
consonant sound. Yeah.
Yeah, both are consonant sounds. In sibilants, that you either have the repetition of the s or the sh sound, right? But
Yes.
sibilance is also part of consonants, to understand that.
Ma'am,
Okay.
so
Huh.
if there is assonance, we can say there is alliteration too, and it is different.
No. See, the difference between assonance, consonant, sibilance, and alliteration is that in the second ones, right? All these assonance, consonant, sibilance, the repeated sound doesn't have to be in an adjacent word. right? That should be a slide. I think the next slide here. Yeah, look at this. Look at the examples here. Jack and Jill went up the hill. Too cool for school. Or chips and dips or surf and turf. The difference here is I'm looking for alliteration. Is it not? This one. Here, what is the case? Look at the first one particularly. Betty baked buns besides bacons. What do you see here? There is all the sounds that are repeating, they're all found in adjacent words. They're not apart from each other. Whereas in the case of assonance, consonants, or sibilants, it just have to be found somewhere else also in the phrase, right? It doesn't have to be, the repeating sound be in the next adjacent word that you see there. This is the basic difference between repetition of sounds in alliteration and assonance, consonants, and sibilants would be. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, there's another figure of speech that works based on the repetition principle. What is that? Anaphora.
Yes, ma'am.
Where is it here?
But
So
in that
what is the difference?
anaphora, word,
Huh.
same word will repeat.
Yes, it's the word that repeats or a sequence of word that repeats. In alliteration, assonance, sibilants, consonants, what repeats is the sound, right? Anaphora, the repetition is the word or the sequence of words. It's stay home, stay safe. Okay, or all that poem and repeats in the beginning of each of the line, right? So it's the word that repeats instead of the sound. Okay. Then comes another set of figure of speech which works based on the principle of contradiction. What are those? The first one, juxtaposition, right? It's here. Two opposing ideas are placed next to each other in such a way that they highlight the differences or the similarities, right? All is fair in war and love. It was the best of the times. It was the worst of the times. A living dead person, right? So two opposing ideas placed next to each other to highlight either the differences or the similarities, right? So
Ma'am,
are they contradictory in nature? They're trying to give you a contrastive effect, right?
yes, ma'am.
Yeah, any question?
Yes, ma'am. In this, the
Yeah.
line is written, both antithesis and oxymoron fall under juxtaposition.
Yes,
So-
yes. They fall under juxtaposition, and overall all of them can be counted as figures of speech that work by the principle of contradiction, right? All of these. Juxtaposition, irony, antithesis, oxymoron. Irony may be a little different, but still maybe we can say it falls under this category. And light arts, right? All of these, they work on the principle of contradiction.
But ma'am, paradox also we
Huh.
can say is
No. Paradox is different from this. Paradox is not a contrary situation. It is a situation where both the given scenario looks true. Sorry, opposing to
it
each
doesn't
other.
have to be
yet
contradict.
they don't contradict. They are not contradicting each other. They're opposing scenarios, but when they are put together overall, it looks true statement with a true value, right?
Okay.
This one is not that. This is an outright contradicting thing, whether it's juxtaposition or oxymoron or, I mean, something which can't be. But paradox can be, right? Although it looks opposing. In this case, it is not the case, right? It was the best of the, it was the worst of the times. It's not something that is a possibility. It is just used to give that figurative value to the statement, right? It is either
Yes.
to highlight the differences that existed or the similarities. But in case of paradox, that was not the case.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So other things in this category, first is juxtaposition. The next contradictory principle figure of speech would be not this, not anaphora. Did we pass it through? Where is oxymoron? Okay, light arts. We'll discuss this as well. This is also part of the figure of speech that works with contradiction. Light arts. statement, right? You use a negative statement to say something that is positive, right? Not bad, not without truth. Now here, this example, filthy rich can be a little debatable because filthy rich is something that people use for both, right? It can be used as a positive statement in certain contexts. In certain contexts, it can also mean negative, right?
Negative.
Like,
Yes, ma'am.
so that depends entirely on the context in which it is placed. Like if I say something like, okay, if it is something that I look up to, right? Then me using filthy rich is like, look at the statement. No, she started her business a few years ago. Now I hear that she's filthy rich. Does this sound like a positive statement to you or a negative statement to you?
It's negative.
No. In this given context, she started her business a few years ago. Now I hear
Okay,
that
in
she's
this
filthy
context, it is looking like positive.
like a positive thing to
Because
say.
in
Now,
a
it is
very
also a
less
matter of
year,
tone, right?
Yeah.
So, like the same sentence can become negative also, depend if provided in a different context. Now we only have this with us, right? So if we have more context to add to this, say for example, you're talking about somebody who's cheated a lot in business, and
yeah,
by
then it
that
will be a
result, by that consequently, you're saying this person only started few years ago, and now he's filthy rich or she rich. Basically means that they've used many, unwarranted efforts to become rich, right? But if you're saying something like it's only been a few years, but this person has performed excellently, then then using filthy rich in that context would mean that I'm only using it to exaggerate the kind of quick success this person has achieved in small time in a positive way. Okay. So this
yes.
filthy rich could be something that you can use in both contexts, but the other things that you see here, not bad, not with truth, these are classic examples of light arts, right? Where you're actually intending to say something good, but you're using a negative statement to say that. Did you make the dish? Not bad, which means that this is good. I liked it. What he said is not without truth basically means that the person, whatever the person said is actually the truth, right?
Yeah.
So this is the use of light out. So use contradictory things in order to establish a positive point.
Ma'am,
What was the other?
we
Yes, go
also
on.
can say damn good means whenever
Damn
did you
good.
work
Yes,
well?
correct. Damn good is also an example of a light out. Where are the other things? Irony. We just check out irony. Irony is situational. And what happens? Actual events could turn out to be in exact opposite way than what one expects, right? So irony
Yeah.
also falls in this category, but it needn't be always contradictory, right? The examples, although we've given here, is something that fits properly in the contradiction category. My sister gets really scared at the sight of blood. She's a nurse, right? So two opposing things, something that people find it difficult to go together. The snowball fight was rescheduled due to heavy snowfall. Proofreader wrote, I am committed to excellence, the excellence spelling being wrong,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is ironical. Again, this also falls under the contradiction category. So juxtaposition, light odds, irony. I'm looking for antithesis and it's here.
Oxymoron.
That's fine, right? No pain, no gain. Man proposes, God disposes. To err is human, to forgive divine, right? Something that is in opposition at the same time. That is why the contradiction, right? It is contradictory because two opposing things they seem to exist in the same, right? Which is
And
why
structure will be same, we can say.
structure will be same. Yes, this is also another aspect of antithesis. It will have parallel grammatical structure. So no pain, no gain. It can't be no pain and something else in the gain, right? Man proposes, God disposes. It needs to follow similar grammatical structure, right? To err is human. Now this is to err is human. This is started off with a infinitive verb to err, right? So if it started with an infinitive verb, then the next part also has to start with an infinitive verb. To forgive is to forgive divine. Okay, this is not important. What is more important is how it begins, right? Begins with an infinitive, the next part also begins with an infinitive. So the grammatical structure is parallel. Okay. So in addition to it being contradictory to each other, because two different things are being said in the same time, it also follows the parallel grammatical structure. These two things together will make something an antithesis. Okay.
Ma'am, here
Yes.
error means
Huh?
here. What is the meaning of
To
error?
err. To err means to commit an error, to make a mistake.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Err,
why
the
doesn't she
verb
write
form for error.
to error? Yeah.
ERR. It's not a very commonly used verb in modern English, but it's from the noun error, to err. That's the verb form for that. Okay.
So it is the verb form.
Yeah, it's a verb form. To err. ERR comes from the noun form error. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Now I think oxymoron. Okay. It was a bittersweet experience. That was an
It's so
awfully good
means,
movie.
yeah.
Again, same thing, contradictory things put together. But the difference here is what? Here you only have contradiction between a pair of words, right? Whereas in irony, it can be a situation. In juxtaposition, it could be a statement. In itots, again, it's it won't have a pair of words. It will have two words, but then one of the word will have to be a negative word in that, right? Here, this is not the case. This is just two different words put together, but have the ones which have opposite meanings. Bitter, sweet, directly opposite to each other. Awfully good, directly opposite to each other. Sweet, sorrow. Okay, some sort of an unrealistic combination. And brawling love, loving hate. Both again oxymorons, right? So yes, so under the contradiction category, principle of contradiction for figures of speech, you have juxtaposition, light thoughts, irony, antithesis, and oxymoron. Okay. What did we have under unrealistic and exaggerated principle? These hyperbole, right? Examples. It's raining cats and dogs. There was pin drop silence, exaggeration, right? You cannot ever have pin drop silence. He's a very funny person. I died laughing at his jokes. Okay. I have been waiting forever for him to say yes. Okay. All of this exaggerated part. You speak so sweet, I will get a cavity from all the talk. Huh? So exaggeration. Next one, placing unrealistic expressions would be euphemism, right?
Simile.
Euphemism, when do you use euphemism? When you want to talk about an inconvenient truth or something that is considered offensive. When you want to talk about something which you cannot talk about directly or in a straightforward manner, like something about somebody passing away, to someone's death, or somebody losing the job, right? Examples: passed away instead of died, guest worker instead of temporary worker, right? So the idea here is to tone down, right? When you want to tone down a little bit on your language, when you want to make it more direct so as to not hurt somebody or to cut down the offense in your language, you use euphemism. You talk euphemistically about something, right? So there are many aspects of human lives and otherwise which requires to be placed that way. Then the next thing in this category would be paradox, which we already discussed, right? Then comes repetition, also we discussed, contradiction, unrealistic or exaggerated patterns that we discussed. Then substitution, yes. In substitution, you will have some of these. Metonymy. What is metonymy? Look at the examples. Refers to the use of name of one thing for another, right? And the phrase that is used is closely related to the word that needs to be substituted, right? Examples: the Kiwis played well in today's match. Kiwis for New Zealand's cricket team. The White House wished all Indians on the occasion of Diwali. White House refers to the President of the USA, right? So, which means Okay, now I'll bring in one more part into this. But is there something that you already discovered while you're talking about metonymy? There's another figure of speech which you can talk about while you're discussing metonymy. Any idea?
No, ma'am.
Where is
Is it
it?
fun?
I'm looking for it. Let me see, where is it? It's called this synecdoche, right? This is a form of metonymy. This also works on the principle of substitution, right? So if I am to compare two examples, this one, that the White House, where did it go? White House wished all Indians on the occasion of Diwali, right? This is one example we have. And the other example is from synecdoche. How did the accident happen? He fell fast asleep on the wheels, right? So here we say that the wheels refer to the vehicle or car, which means you have substituted the word car with the wheels, right? Referring to the wheels here basically refers to the whole of the car. A part of the vehicle is referring to the whole of vehicle. But is that the case in this metonymy that we have seen? The White House
Not
wished
in
all
every
Indians
case,
on the
ma'am, you can
occasion
say.
of Diwali. What happened? You're not able to see the screen because I cannot. Now you can see,
Ma'am,
right?
we can. Yeah.
Yes. Right. Let me do one thing. Let me copy this and put this in the chat so that we don't have to go back and forth. So this is the first one. The White House wished all Indians on the occasion of Diwali. And then the second one that we are going to have is this one. Right? So in the second one, we have already discussed this part, that wheels refers to the whole of the car, right? Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
He fell fast asleep on the wheels basically means that he fell asleep while he was driving and driving a car, right? So on the wheels, fell fast asleep on the wheels. Wheels here refers to a part of the whole of the vehicle, this car. This is an example of synecdoche. Now, synecdoche can be the other way around as well, right? That is referring from part to whole, right? How many of you would come for the trekking? Can we have a head count? Right, this is part to whole. Whole to part would be, I went out for lunch with my friends. Friends refer to a certain individual and not every person who one considers their friend, right? Or the next example you have, the police were at my uncle's shop after the shop adjacent to his reported robbery. The police refers to only a whole department. Okay, so it's an example of synecdoche where referring from whole to part. The previous one you had from part to whole. Now my question is, how would you differentiate between this one and the example metonymy, that is the White House wished all Indians on the occasion of Diwali? Is there the significant difference is this part to whole and whole to part reference? Do you see anything like that in the first sentence? The White House wished all Indians on the occasion of Diwali. Because this is a genuine confusion. A lot of people would want to think that this is a whole to part synecdoche.
But we cannot say that in that case
No,
because
we cannot.
White House just refers USA.
Yeah,
It's
it
not
just
part.
refers to the president of USA. This one person that's being referred to. This is a direct reference, right? So instead of saying the president of the USA wished all Indians on the occasion of Diwali, you substituted it with the White House. So it's just a direct case of substitution. There is no inclusion of part or whole or anything. It's just that one thing, that one entity, which is the president of US. Okay. So this is the primary difference between using metonymy and synecdoche, right? Both of them do work by the principle of substitution, but synecdoche will have some element of part and whole in its use, whereas metonymy will not have. It is a direct substitution. Okay, that's a difference. Now, another one that is a part of this would be personification. Why personification? You give human attributes to things that are non-living, right? So you, in sense, you try to substitute the non-living things. You try to give off that attribute to things that are non-living, like trees, plants, or anything, right? Animals, they all become a part of this personification process. So even that would be considered a figure of speech which works by the principle of substitution. Okay, so what I was trying to tell you by using, okay, pun, how do you use pun? Pun doesn't belong to any of this category. It's a different kind of a figure of speech. Can February, March? No, but April, May. So this is, you trying to play around the meanings of the word, particularly words that have got more than one meaning. And both the meanings can stay in the same place. Can February, March? No, but April, May. Right? So given the similarities of the way they are pronounced or their spellings, they acquire this double meanings in the sentence. So this is again a figure of speech which is used to provide more attention or to draw more attention to what you're saying, right? Not a very common kind of figure of speech, especially in writing, right? Because we're also discussing this part. It is more commonly seen in speech and mostly informal speech than formal forms of speech, right? So say your stand-up comedy. Sorry?
In simile and pun, means in simile also we have two different meanings for.
In simile? No, simile, what has it got to do with pun?
Means here also one word has two meanings. Means
Simile. What is the other meaning for simile?
in simile, when we compare things which are not directly,
Yeah, that is the actual meaning of simile. What other meaning does simile have?
I don't know, ma'am.
No, right? No, it does not. So in this can February, March, no, but April, May, what are the words that have pun on?
March and May.
March and May, right? So March and May definitely have at least two different meanings, right? Simile doesn't. It only has one. And see, not all words which have two different meanings can be used in a pun, right? That also you should understand. Which is why it's an art, you need to figure out which ones can be used. See, if you're someone who watches stand-up comedies, a lot of stand-up comedians work with puns, right? A lot of them use puns in their joke deliveries. So pun, that is why I was saying it is not something that you would find very commonly in writing. This is seen mostly in speech and that too informal kind of speech, right? When it's a more fun, frolic conversation, not like a serious presentation or anything, right? But pun does not belong to the other categories that we discussed. It's a separate figure of speech on its own. Anything else that this we discussed? Metaphor and simile on their own, they are devices of comparison, one direct and the other indirect, right? So what I was trying to tell you by taking this up for discussion is that you need to break down the content of lecture, right? So if you had broken this down into figures of speech used for comparison, you would have gotten simile and metaphor in that, one direct and one indirect, right? Then figures of speech used figures of speech that use principle of contradiction, you would have got juxtaposition, light odds, irony, antithesis and oxymoron in that one category. The figures of speech that use the principle of repetition, you would have gotten another set: alliteration, assonance, consonance, sibilance, which all repeat the sounds, and then additional one there, anaphora, which repeats the word, right? Similarly, if you look at something, a figure of speech that works by principle of substitution, you had metonymy, synecdoche, and personification. The last one, the figure of speech that works on unrealistic or exaggeration principle, you had hyperbole, euphemism, and paradox, right? Instead of looking at all of them as separate figures of speech, learn to break it down, right? So you have three or four categories, then it becomes easy for you to understand and learn them, right? So this could be one approach that you can take to not just for this, learn this figures of speech, but even the other kind of lectures. In grammar, it is pretty straightforward, but when you get lectures on these kind of topics, okay, which are more about the language use part, right? Not the structure, but the use part. It's always better that you break it down like this. Why don't you try on your own, Urvashi? You're writing it down. That's a good thing.
Maybe she forget, ma'am. Which is coming into which.
See, you mostly have 4 or 5 categories, right? The categories are first on comparison, right? And in
Yes.
comparison includes
It's simply metaphor.
both direct and indirect ones. Second category would be figures of speech based on contradictions, right? Which includes juxtaposition, light out.
Juxtaposition,
You guys are writing it down
light
now.
out, No, I'm saying. I just
Okay, yeah.
remember it. Yeah.
Okay, juxtaposition, light out. Don't remember it, okay? Once you
Okay, I
read through
should
and
write
you
it.
can make this categorization, don't try to remember it. There's no point of remembering these things.
Yeah, but in this
Juxtaposition,
way, we will remember it for the for the long
I'm saying
time.
we'll remember it for the longer time, I know, but try to not make this a habit of by hearting things, you know. Okay, juxtaposition, light outs, irony, antithesis, and oxymoron. These would fall under the category of contradictions. Okay. Then the next one would be repetition, right? This one is easy. What all would you have? Alliteration, assonance, consonance, sibilance, right? In this alliteration, it is based on repetition. All of them are based on repetition of sounds, right? Alliteration, assonance, consonance, sibilance. Difference between alliteration and the rest is that for alliteration, the repeating sound has adjacent words. The words have to be next to each other. But assonance, consonance, and sibilance, it is not necessary in these components to have the words placed next to each other. It could be somewhere in that expression, right? The sound should just repeat somewhere in the sentence or the phrase or expression. The sentence usually don't have, for all of these kind of figure of speeches, it's mostly a phrase, right? So it can repeat anywhere in the next word. It does not have to be in the beginning of the word, or it doesn't even have to be in the next word. It can be the next to next word also. But in alliteration, it definitely has to be in the following word, the next word that follows the one with the repeating sound. Another one in this category is anaphora. In anaphora, we are not talking about repeating sounds. We're talking about repeating words, right? So stay home, stay safe. Stay is a word that is repeating, but in the adjacent phrases. Here, adjacency is important. Okay. So that's your third category, I think. Then next one would be categories based on exaggeration or unrealistic experience, right? So that will have hyperbole, right? That is particularly for exaggeration, euphemism, and paradox. These 3 would fall in that category. Okay. And in addition to this, you have what? Substitution. In substitution, what are the two main figures of speech? What are those? Metonymy, right? Metonymy and then synecdoche. There's one more in that, which is personification. Correct? And there is one
Ma'am, in
last thing which does not.
exaggeration,
So exaggeration, we
what
already
would,
discussed, no? Exaggeration or unrealistic principles, you have
means in that
hyperbole.
category?
In that
Hyperbole.
category, you have hyperbole and euphemism and paradox. Exaggeration
Yes.
or unrealistic situations, right? Then there's one which does not belong to any of these categories, which are the puns, right? They derive their figurativeness from the virtue of having multiple meanings, right? The words that have multiple meanings. This sums up your figures of speech. Metaphor is what? Metaphor is a device of comparison, Urvashi. It will fall under the comparison category, right? So comparison, contradiction, repetition, exaggeration or unrealisticness, then substitution and pun, which does not belong to any of these multiple meanings. So break it down and then things would be better. Okay. This is a way of learning you can adopt, not just for English. This is possible for anything else that you do. Some will have a natural course for this comparison and for this classificatory nature. Arts and social sciences, you will have to put some effort to synthesize things. But once you do that, it's easy. Okay. All right. So what we'll do is, for the next class, I have a set of questions for figures of speech. We'll begin the class with discussing that maybe for the first 15 minutes or so. And then I want to start discussing adverbs with you. Okay. For next week. And your exams on the 25th of Feb, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I would like to cover at least clauses also that before your exams. But if there is anything more pressing than clauses from the first 4 weeks, you can let me know. We'll take that up. Although for me, this one and the clauses and adverbs are the one that I think, which I consider the most important ones from that, or something that would require some attention. But if you have anything else on mind, please let me know so that I can arrange the lectures accordingly.
No, ma'am, we could go like that.
This is okay? Okay. So it's okay, then we'll do it that way.
Ma'am, I have a question.
Touch and give a good experience. Yeah, see, we can do that. The only problem is that we should have a good bandwidth. If I'm going to switch on the video, there will be other disturbances. Not like I have a problem doing it. Sometimes we work out of the office. Sometimes we do it some other place. So depending on the bandwidth, we decide whether we should switch on the video or not. I usually prefer not doing that because that invites other kind of problems. But yes, we can try sometimes.
Yes, ma'am. In graded
Yeah, now that
assignment,
you
there
know,
is a
Urvashi, you
question.
try to solve this on your own. Okay. You try now, look at it from what we have discussed. Try and see how you can solve it. So were you saying something? I heard somebody else speaking.
Yes, ma'am. It was magical realism. What it
Okay.
is?
But where is it? I don't see that in the option only.
Option.
Magical realism is not technically a figure of speech. It's a style of writing. Where did you come across magical realism?
Ma'am, it is a graded assignment.
In
They have
graded
asked us
assignment.
magical realism is an example of paradox, true or false, actually.
But where in lecture do you have magical realism is what I'm thinking. Okay, anyway, we'll check. All right.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's all. So like what we discussed, the plan for next week would be that. Keep going through this. Materials will already be uploaded in your supplementary tab in case you want to go through those exercises. Even those figure of speech statements, please maybe run through it before you come to the next class. Okay. And these slides on figure of speech, these are not any different from the ones that you have used for the lecture. This is a lecture PPT only that I'm using. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right then. Thank you so much. We'll meet again for the next class on Tuesday at 6, right? I see that a lot of people have gone for the stats session, right? Someone told me you have a stats class now.
Yes,
Some
ma'am.
of
It's
you, at
going
least, the
on
people who have
actually.
taken that maybe.
Yeah.
But the timings is something that we cannot work with. I've already seen that clash, but it's difficult to work out. Nobody is willing to take up a morning or an afternoon slot for the reason that people will not attend. For most of the people, this looks like a time where they can. So unfortunately, these things happen, but these are recorded sessions. So you can always come back and check these. Okay. All right. Then thank you so much. I'll see you again next week.
Thank you.